Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hey, thanks for joining me today for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. If you're new to the show, here's a little background. This is where I feature conversations with women who have inspirational stories to share. These are women who have accomplished great things in their field of excellence. They've overcome adversity. They've taken chances. They have pushed themselves to their limit. Now, these are women who epitomize being bold. And what I've learned over the years, as I challenge myself in different realms, it's that when you hear stories about other people's successes, triumphs, and their obstacles, it makes what you want to do seem possible. You realize that success doesn't magically happen for people and that there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. So to me, that's really inspiring. It gives me reason to not give up on my own dreams and goals. We all have the ability to become better versions of ourselves, and we have opportunities to do that every single day, every hour, every minute. It's in those decisions that we make. And in these conversations, I know you'll find pearls of wisdom that inspire you, that motivate you, or maybe they shine a light on your pain point, that thing that makes you want to change and make choices in your life that make you happier and more fulfilled. You do not need to make a big, grand goal. As they say, progress, not perfection. But those small changes add up, and they make longer-lasting changes. So that is why I'm here, and hopefully why you are here also, to learn a thing or three and to find some inspiration and motivation to make a change. Okay, with that, I want to introduce today's guest. Julia Garling was diagnosed with a brain tumor at 24. And while that was an awakening for her, it took her some time to go from being a fund manager at a New York City financial institution to a marathoner who's now completed well over 200 races to date. On the way to that amazing number of marathons, she went through this debilitating illness when the doctors suggested she might not ever walk again. Julia is now living a very happy life in Portland, Oregon, where she's a massage therapist, and she specializes in massage for runners. She's also a pacer for races, and she's now on her third time around running marathons in all 50 states. Now, to say that Julia is an inspiration is putting it lightly. Julia didn't let the words of people in her life, especially her doctors, dissuade her from wanting to accomplish grand things like walking, as simple as that. Instead, she hung on to the words of people she read about who had overcome adversity. And then she took things in her own hands and she completely changed her life. I beg you, if you know of anyone struggling with a chronic illness or life-threatening disease, I ask that you please share this episode with them. Julia's message of hope and determination is something that everyone should hear, and I really believe her story could help others. Before we get to Julia, just a quick reminder that if you enjoy what you hear in these conversations, you can show your support over at Patreon. For those of you who don't know Patreon, it's a platform where people can support the work of artists and content creators like me through small monthly donations. It's basically a way for you to say, yes, I like what I'm hearing on the She's Bold podcast, and I'm willing to support the show with the cost of a cup of coffee each month. And lest you think that a small donation isn't a big deal, it is, because what you're saying is that you value what I'm bringing to each episode and that you want to hear more. You know, I sit here in my office and I record, or I'm on the road to meet with these women and I record these conversations, and I have no idea who all is out there listening. That Patreon support is a tangible way for me to know you're out there and you're enjoying these conversations. Now, you could give as little as $1 a month, but at $5, you'll be added to a special She's Bold group on Facebook, and that's where I'll share exclusive information with you, and you'll have access to audio and written content that's just for those $5 supporters. You can find out more by going to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. Thank you so much. By the way, I know some people aren't fans of monthly payments. If you'd rather make a one-time payment, you can send me a note at beth@shesboldpodcast.com, and I can provide you with some other payment options like Venmo or PayPal. We can just make it a one-time thing. And one final note, my time to give back to you. I'm giving away a pair of shoes from OOFOS this month. That's OOFOS. Details will be at the end of this podcast, and there will also be a link in the show notes for that. Okay, with all of that out of the way, please enjoy this amazing conversation with Julia Garling. You have a freaking amazing story.
Thank you.
And you're being so humble about it as we just do a little pre-chat and get set up here. We'll get into the details of it so people can hear the amazingness of it all. And you're being so sweet that it's, to me, like in the world of me, social media, look at me, we're all trying to get out there and tell our stories and spin our stories. And I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware that a lot of stuff that goes out there on social media isn't necessarily, it's all the pretty stuff. We don't see the stuff that's going on in the background. I'm sure that there's stuff, the not pretty stuff that you don't put on social media, but you put some pretty cool stuff on there. And I want to talk about that. I want to dig into that a little bit. And like I said, you're so sweet to have me here in your Portland home. And I'm so excited to chat with you and figure out how the heck you've done what you've done. And I think it's a story that so many people need to hear because I want to say you're not a superhero, but in ways you are a superhero, and people need to hear your story that someone without an actual superpower made it into a superpower. That's how I think of it. So thank you. I'll let you say something now.
All that pretty stuff is pretty,
yeah,
but it's the not pretty stuff that grows you. It's that meat and the potatoes that I've had to work through. Mm-hmm. My whole life I had to work and work and work, and I finally got to this place where I stopped working so hard and I just started to enjoy my life.
And what happened then?
I started following my bliss, living my truth, living on my vibrational truth, not this made up version. Media tells you what to do. Parents tell you what to do. Society tells you what to do. Socioeconomic things ensure that you go a certain way to break out of those chains. Eventually you stop listening and you just start following your heart.
How do you turn it off though? When it's so pervasive and so in your face. And what I'm thinking of are just the signals that we get from society, and to conform, to behave a certain way, to eat a certain way, to look a certain way. How do you turn that off? Do you have a magic bullet? Like a magic pill?
The universe decided for me. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I got
quote unquote
my bachelor's degree in finance and accounting, and I spent 15 years doing other people's plans and other people's goals. And the universe intervened and said, stop. For the second time in my life, it said, I'm giving you a fresh start. In 2008, the market tanked. I was living in New York. I was working in finance. I was in a fund. And 2008 happened. Everything went topsy-turvy. The world was pulled upside down. The rug was pulled from out of us, underneath us, and everything just flipped. Banks that were around for 100 years closed. Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, lots of funds, and I was in a fund that closed. And the universe said, stop. This is not where you're supposed to be. I have something better for you. And first I cried, and how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay off my degrees? And then I realized I have an opportunity to do something better.
How much time went by until you realized it was an opportunity?
I got laid off in September, and in January, the following January, I enrolled in massage school.
So fresh start, January.
I had severance, thank goodness. I was in the fund for a long time, but I had my mortgage and I had my graduate degree and I had things to pay off. I didn't know how I was going to survive, and New York City is an expensive place to live.
Yeah, it is.
I started planning. I'm going to move in with my dad. I'm going to move in with my boyfriend. I'm going to rent out the condo. I just started planning. And then I was in the subway going to my own massage therapist. And I saw an ad, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. And okay, it stuck in my brain. And I was telling my massage therapist, I love you, but I can't afford you.
This is in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And where's the Pacific College?
There is a chapter in New York City.
Okay.
There's a chapter in San Diego and in Illinois and, of course, in China. And you can study acupuncture, massage, or holistic nursing. I was going to my massage therapist on a regular basis because I'm an avid runner, because I'm a crazy runner. And I told her, I just can't afford you anymore. I've recently been let go. My life's going to change drastically. And she said, you should consider massage school. I think you'd be good at it, because I was always asking her questions. What is this muscle? What are you working on? Why are you working here when it hurts here? How does this relate to this? I was constantly grilling her, not in a negative way, just finding out what is she doing.
Because you were curious mind.
She said, I would be good at massage school. And then I remember the ad, and the universe just said, go. I went for an information session. That was it.
And this was in New York, and you attended there?
I attended there for 2 years, and I received my Associates of Occupational Massage. I don't know what it was called. And during the process, I was learning how I can be I was going to look for a fund. Surely I wasn't going to do massage for a living, but I was going to look for how I can be a better runner, a less injury-prone runner. I had my own injuries that I wanted to fix. And after you fix yourself, it's time to help fix others. But I went under the reason for going was to fix me, not to find a new career. It just happened. It mushroomed by itself. After the market tanked the way it did, and thousands of people were looking, my own friends and people I don't know were looking for the same job, I realized it was moot. There was no reason to even look. So I immersed myself in massage school, focused on running, lived in my little bubble. After 10 months of coursework, it was time to do clinical rotation. And I didn't want to work on people I didn't know. So I sent a mass email to all my friends, which are all runners, and said, free massage. Come see me in the clinic. These are my hours. I filled up quickly.
Oh, I bet you did.
It allowed me to hone my skills. It allowed me to help my friends feel better in their body. One thing led to the other. And she told 2 friends, and she told 2 friends, and she told 2 friends. And before you know it, I had my own practice. I was still going to look for a fund.
Yeah, because of the financial stability in that.
It never occurred to me to do something that resonated with my heart as a profession. I was just learning a new skill to take my mind off the fact that I was unemployed and $50,000 in debt, and how am I going to pay off my apartment?
Right.
It didn't occur to me that it could be a vocation. I was doing it out of sheer love. Love for myself.
And was it when you had all of these clients, like kind of, as you said, it just mushroomed, that's when you thought, oh gosh, this is actually, the business is right in front of me. I didn't even know it.
Actually, no. I was going to take the boards. This New York State board exam to become a licensed massage therapist was up and coming. And the same week I was going to take the boards, somebody called me and said, we have a fund for you. A recruiter on LinkedIn, I had a profile, and he said, we have a fund looking for exactly what you're doing. Coming in for an interview. This is a great fit. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. I went in. I got the interview. I had a great interview. I hadn't worked for a year. Of course, I was given the offer. I accepted. I took my boards. I passed. I started doing massage and working for this fund simultaneously. And within that year, I realized as I was doing massage and I was doing the fund work, I'm an accountant. This was my vibrational truth. This was where I was supposed to be. This was making me money. I was juggling both for a year because I'm practical. I hadn't worked for a year.
Sure.
And during that year, I realized the fund, okay, I could do it. But my passion was helping people feel better in their bodies. I was actually making a difference in people's lives by the power of touch. Staring at my spreadsheet, helping rich people get richer, that never lived in my heart.
Was it a slow process? I can imagine that there was the excitement of having a new job, putting yourself wholeheartedly into the new job and learning. And then at some point, there's this, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? Did that just kind of slowly creep up on you in the evening you went home and you did massage, and on the weekends you did massage, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute.
I have to go back to work.
Yeah.
I made a commitment to this fund, and when I give my word, your word is your bond. I wanted to at least see them through their first audit, which is why they hired me. And my commitment was at least a year with this fund, which is what I did. But during that year, like you said, on the weekends, I'm a marathoner, and I would volunteer my time at events to meet new clients and to work with race directors. And I would pace running very comfortably. And then in the end, I would do massage. And my weekend and my evening was my real passion. But during the day, I went to do the fund work because that's adulting. Doing a job isn't your passion. Doing a job is what you have to do to be an adult.
Yeah.
A productive member of society.
I want to just go back and for listeners who don't know what pacing is, because it'll probably come up again later in the conversation as well. It's when a person or a group of, usually is it just one person who does the pacing? And
for large marathons like Chicago and New York, we have 2.
Okay. And then you'll be carrying a placard that has a time on it, and that's the goal time for the marathoner like myself. And so if I'm shooting for an under 4-hour marathon, I would be pacing, let's say, with the 3:55 pacer. You are the one who's pacing and who's keeping track of the time.
We are the metronome. We
Yes,
keep a consistent pace from start to finish. And as long as you can see our flag, as long as you're in a bubble,
right,
you're going to finish at that time or just below that time. Because a good pacer finishes at like 30 to 59 seconds under their goal.
So you're doing what you love, what your heart's telling you to do on the weekends.
I did go to school. I studied really hard and I paid a lot of money. So I figured I have to use this degree. Not to mention I waited a whole year to get this fund, this opportunity. And I was humbled. I wanted to do a good job. I didn't want to be half into it. Once the audit was complete and once we were fully running operationally tip-top, I resigned. And he said, my boss said to me, "What fund are you going to?" I said, "I'm not.
I'm going to the FUN instead of the fund, dropping the D off.
I'm going to be my own boss." He said, "What do you mean?" And I explained to him that I've been doing massage, body work, and I went to massage school, and this is truly where I belong. And he laughed at me. He said, "You'll be back within 6 months, and by then we'll have no use for you." He offered me more money to stay, and I thanked him, but I said, "No, I have to follow my own heart." And I resigned.
Yeah, that's a big, big deal.
Freedom.
Yeah, that is freedom. How much longer did you stay in New York?
Such a long story. My husband and I planned for me to be completely out of the fund and rent out the condo fully without any obligations, and then I could move.
So without any obligations, you mean financial obligations? Okay.
Once the apartment was being paid for by the tenant, I didn't have to stay in New York and make money. And I can come to a new place and start a new business without worries of how am I going to float in my New York lifestyle.
Do you still have your condo in New York?
I do.
Oh, so smart. Yeah, the accountant in you, of course. It's like, I'm going to make a smart move here and keep that place. So good. So how long did that take?
About a year.
Okay. And then to Portland.
I started completely fresh all over again.
Yeah, with the hubby.
With the hubby. I've never lived anywhere else except New York City. Well, that's not true. I'm originally from former Soviet Union. I lived in Russia for the first 7 years of my life. But you're not making any decisions. You're just a child.
And then you moved from there to New York.
My mother and I were political refugees. We are Jewish, and in former Soviet Union, communist does not like Jews. She was fired, and I was sent home from school with a note. "We don't want your Jew kind here."
Fired from her job.
This is 1980. This is not 1940.
Oh my gosh.
And so we applied for asylum, and we got the paperwork, and we migrated. We came to New York City.
Wow. Do you remember much from that time?
So much.
Was it frightening
Vividly.
for you, or was it exciting?
Very frightening. It was extremely frightening because I was an idyllic lifestyle. I mean, I didn't know anything else. There was a lot of snow. I had the love of my grandparents, and it was in the city. We used to snowshoe to school.
Oh, no kidding. Huh.
It was a very happy lifestyle, but
Yeah.
I didn't know as a child what I didn't know. My mother wanted opportunities for us that she couldn't have for herself. She wanted for me. So we left the world we knew. She didn't speak a lick of English or anything. She gave up her
And you didn't
life.
either
No,
at
of
that
course
time.
not. She gave up her life, and we started over in New York City.
So you got dumped into the New York City probably public school system
I did.
at age 7 or 8.
7.
And how did you fare? Do you remember?
It was so scary. It was such a homogenized world in Russia. Everyone looked exactly the same. That was the point of communism. We all dressed the same. We had a uniform. I had a black dress with a white apron and a white bow. And all the boys had little blazers. We saluted Lenin, if you can believe that.
In 1980. Hard to believe, but yeah.
And then coming into New York City, into Spanish Harlem, into a completely different world, living in projects and people of all nationalities and races and just different socioeconomic background, because everyone was the same in Russia. I mean, we didn't have much, but nobody wanted for anything. It's very, very different here.
So was that scary to you to be amongst so many different people? Or did you embrace that and go, woo, look what I've been missing this whole time?
That's where my wanderlust was born. It was during the journey. It wasn't like we got on a plane in Minsk and came to JFK. We took a train at night and went to Austria. And
like under the cover of dark kind of thing?
Yes. And we lived in Austria until we got the paperwork, the stamp, the approval to go to Rome. And from Rome, we were in Rome for 3 months. We were waiting. She actually applied to Israel. That's where we were supposed to go. But the paperwork didn't materialize, and we wound up going to New York. Somewhere in the process, it was 1980, who remembers, something went awry, or maybe that's where she actually wanted to go. I don't know. Eventually, we wound up in New York, and that took a good 3 months. But during that process, I was learning, I was seeing. For the first time, I was seeing. Out of Russia, I was like in Rome. It was very, very different. It was scary, but it was also exciting.
Yeah.
That's where my wanderlust was born. My one suitcase and my one teddy bear.
That, I can't even imagine at the age of 7. Like, I barely remember what I was doing when I was 7. And I can't imagine such dramatic memories. It had to be really dramatic in good and bad ways. But it really must have been a huge impression upon you back then. It's so mind-blowing to me. It's really difficult to imagine.
It was interesting to see how different people live differently. And I was only taught to live one way. And it was just an amalgam of different cultures and different skin colors and different religions. And everything was just so different. I've never seen anything like it. And I was just like a kid absorbing it all in.
Do you think that sense of wonder and absorption and interest, do you wake up with that daily now? Or do you think that that's faded?
It's faded, but I always have inside a yearning to see more, something that I'm missing. There's somewhere in the world that I need to be. Every year I make a point to go to a place I've never been. And that's always been the case.
So you're traveling not only, I mean, we got brought together through the running community. We have a mutual friend, and I think we have several mutual friends, and we got connected on Facebook. And I've watched what you're doing through Facebook, but I actually didn't realize that travel was such a big thing for you as well. So name a place. Where did you go in 2018 that was new for you?
Tasmania.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
the farthest, most remote place.
Yes.
The year prior to the Sydney Marathon was...
so you're combining marathoning and your travels.
Without a marathon, I'm not getting on the plane.
Smart girl.
That was the impetus of me becoming a 50-stater. I was going to a new city to run that race. The best way to see a city is to run through it.
Yes, I know.
I think.
I absolutely agree with you. I'm a relatively new to running. And when I first started running, I thought, oh my God, because I was traveling and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go out for a little 3-mile run. And I remember very vividly running through Rome and past the Colosseum and around all these ancient ruins and thinking, oh my God, this is the bomb. You know, this is just amazing being able to run through these cities like this. It is great. Wow.
I just thought South Africa.
That was last year?
That was 2 years ago.
Oh, gosh. And also, which race did you run?
We did 2 oceans. It's a 56K, 37 miles.
Yeah.
And we actually ran around the Cape of Good Hope. And it was the most beautiful thing. We combined the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. And it was just idyllic. It was beautiful.
Did I read that they're having issues down there because of a drought during that marathon? I think I read something maybe in Runner's World about that there was
they had to reroute us.
Yeah, that's too bad.
There were fires. Because of the drought. There were a lot of fires and they had to reroute. The route wasn't as pretty as it could have been. I've seen pictures on YouTube of someone else running and we didn't have that route, but ours was just as beautiful. Because I've never been there before.
Yeah, of course.
To me, it's always beautiful.
You don't have a comparison.
I love to run in new cities and I cannot wait to continue my journey of the 7 continents.
Well, let's talk about the marathoning a little bit later, because what I want to do is I want to go back and I want to talk about that event that happened to you in your 20s. That was a big changing point for you. And I think such a huge lesson for listeners and for anyone who hears your story. I think it is off the charts, just kind of crazy amazing. So what happened to you? Was it at 24? What happened?
I was diagnosed at 24, but I started to get sick when I was around 22. I had just graduated college and I started working for my first bank Bear Stearns, if you can believe that. And I was working like crazy. I mean, we were working 60 hours a week. We were really working. But you're in your 20s and you have a lot of energy, so you just do it. It's your first job. You roll up your sleeves and you do it. I didn't have time to be taking care of myself. I slept very little. I enrolled in a grad program and I was doing school and I was just busy. I started to develop little seizures, petit mal, absent-minded seizures. I would be talking to you and all of a sudden I'd snap out of it. I'd start smacking my lips and start staring into space. 30 seconds later, I'd resume from the next word as if I never left the conversation.
Did you know what was going on? Someone had to describe to you.
Other people would ask me if I was drunk or if I was high. You know, it was the 90s. I was neither. I was working a lot. I was sleeping very little. I was going to school. I was just burning the candle at both ends, and I wasn't feeling 100%, but I thought that you weren't supposed to be feeling good when you're working so hard. I just started my first real job, one that I'd spent years studying for. I mean, going to school to get this job. I wasn't working in retail anymore. I was actually doing what I was supposed to be doing, adulting. I started to not feel well, and my seizures became more and more advanced. At one point, I had a grand mal seizure. That was the first time it ever happened. I was working at a busy trading desk, and I actually fell off, and I started to convulse. And when I woke up, I was in the hospital.
That was the first time you had been seen by a doctor. You'd been having these petit mal seizures previously, but you didn't go to the doctor then. Okay.
I didn't really know they were happening. I was tired all the time. My head hurt a great deal, but I would self-medicate. I just thought I was adjusting to my new life. I didn't realize that something was wrong. I was living a toxic lifestyle. I was working too much. I was eating fast food. I was not taking care of myself. But at 24, what do you know? I went to a neurologist, and I was told that I have epilepsy, a seizure disorder. So I was put on medications, and I continued my way of life. About 4 months later, I had another grand mal seizure, and this time I was in the subway.
And you were on medication at that point. So in theory, you shouldn't have been having a seizure after that because you were on the medication. Okay.
But I didn't have epilepsy.
Right.
I was misdiagnosed. It took many doctor visits later to determine that I had a brain tumor.
Why did it take so long?
Because it's 97 and the technology wasn't what it is now.
Okay, fair enough. I've been watching too many episodes of House.
Because to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When I went to the doctor who specializes in X, I had X. I just kept seeing, and doctors are busy. They're just people. They don't know. They're not God. I was fortunate enough to go to an acupuncturist because none of my medications were working. Dilantal, Tegretol, Lamictal, phenobarbital. I was put on so many different medications. My system was going haywire. Nothing was working. And everyone kept saying the dosage isn't right. Maybe if we mix this with this. But in the meantime, I wanted to feel good. So through a friend, a colleague, I went to see an acupuncturist. And my acupuncturist put me on some Chinese herbs. And my seizures stopped. So this continued. Another 4 months goes by, 5 months.
Were you off the other meds completely? No. Then you were still on those. Okay.
It was dangerous to get off of them.
Right.
So I started weaning myself. Instead of taking 100 milligrams, I would take 50. I started weaning myself per my doctor's, not happy thoughts. But
right.
Okay, if you want to do it,
at least his or her oversight. If not blessing, then at least oversight.
That's what I meant to say. Not blessing, but just like, okay, if you're going to do it, you have to gradually wean yourself off. So I started to do more acupuncture herbs and acupuncture itself. And I started to feel better. I don't know if the seizures went away because I was never aware of them unless they were grand mal. They were too little for me to notice. They were 30 seconds. Other people started to notice them and they were telling me, but I digress. I started to feel better in my body. And my acupuncturist was telling me that I should eat different foods. I should nurture the chi we were nurturing with the herbs with food. And I started to change my diet. I started to focus more on myself. I stopped with the meds. I stopped with the Western until I had a grand mal seizure in the subway system of the 6th train on Bleecker Street. And I woke up in the hospital again. I don't know how long what happened. I don't know. I could have been trampled. You know how many people go down the stairs when you're about to approach a train and it's rush hour? I could have been in the 3rd rail. I don't know what happened. I just know that I woke up in the hospital and I've soiled myself, obviously. I had a major seizure and I was told that all these medications aren't working. They're canceling each other out. Something has to change. And I was sent to a specialist who said, this thing over here pulled all my scans up of my brain. I've had many. Maybe this is growing. Maybe this isn't a cyst after all. Maybe this is a tumor. And then the thinking changed. From epilepsy, I was then brain tumor girl.
So this is going on for a year and a half, 2 years or so.
A year and a half, yeah.
Okay.
And finally, I went to another doctor that he had prescribed that I visit, and it was definitely determined that I have a brain tumor. And I had to have surgery right away because looking at the different scans, it was growing and it was pressing and it was going to continue to seize.
And did they know at that point whether it was malignant or cancerous?
In those days, you have to have surgery to remove the tumor because there's this moat around the brain called the blood-brain barrier. In those days, I don't know about now, there's no way to determine without having the actual surgery itself. Mm-hmm. So I had a temporal lobectomy and the tumor was removed. And in those days, it took five days to biopsy it. I was in ICU for 5 days waiting for the results. I had a halo around my head. I mean, I couldn't move because my brain was cut open. I was in ICU. I'm not supposed to get any kind of germs in ICU. During the process of waiting for the pathology results, I got sick. I developed an infection. I had swelling in my brain. I had meningitis.
And how did that occur? Do they know?
I'm an open cavity. My brain is cut open. Results came back. It wasn't a good tumor. I had to have a second surgery to remove more of the tumor. Because for the process of the biopsy, only a tiny little bit is removed, just a few cells. But when they realize that it's not a good tumor to have, they have to remove more.
So this is 5 days of just waiting for the diagnosis, and then they have to go back and do another surgery. Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh.
That's why I wasn't kept in ICU, because they didn't stitch me back up. They kept me open with a halo. And during that process is when I got sick. So I had the second surgery to remove the mass. And my biggest fear was, well, it was very experimental at the time. I had to sign all kinds of papers because what if I woke up and I didn't know who I was? What if I woke up as a vegetable? You know, your brain, it's the most important organ you have.
You had family and friends around you at that point?
Okay. I did. I had a boyfriend that I lived with. He was older. We relied on each other, and I also had my father. And I had friends. I was very fortunate. I had a company that allowed me to go on disability, which was invaluable.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, I had health insurance because I was working for a big financial company and I was able to go on disability. So I don't hate that life. Mm-hmm. It was necessary
there's
for
some
me.
benefit to that. Mm-hmm.
Which was scary when I had to give all that up and think, what if I get sick again? Mm-hmm. But that's a different story. I'm sorry. The point is I had to have a second surgery and I got sick in the process of being in the hospital. And that put me back. The second surgery allowed me to get rid of my brain tumor, but I basically had meningitis, which was life-threatening. And I had to relearn how to use my body again because post-op, I said, let's get up. First of all, I didn't have the strength, but eventually I got the strength. I said, let's get up, but my muscles were not responding to my brain. My motor skills were where my tumor was in the right temporal lobe. I was not able to move my body in the way I used to pre-op.
So that's specifically because of the brain tumor and because they don't know whether that was that or the meningitis.
Who knows? I was very weak.
Is meningitis something that you carry with you, a virus that you carry with you through your life? Or is that something that gets kicked out of your system and then you're done with it?
I think I carry it my whole life. And it's something I could have had before that might have been
just manifested
because of the surgeries. I'm not really sure. I did have 1,000 shots before I entered this country. Before I entered any country. Who knows? I just know that I was unlucky at that time, but I was lucky enough to survive the surgery. I was lucky enough to wake up and say, okay, I know where I am. I wiggled my toes. I remembered my name. It was the getting up and going to the bathroom that became a problem.
So what did the doctors tell you at that point?
I was living in a wheelchair. I was fortunate to just be alive. We're going to teach the body how to get stronger. And I worked with physical therapists for like 3 hours every day to try to rebuild the synapses in my brain.
In a hospital or a nursing facility? Or
a nursing facility in New York. And thank God I had insurance. And, you know, it was kind of the hospital's fault I was sick. Because I went in there without the swelling of my brain.
Yeah.
They kind of took care of me, thank goodness. They never said, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they can't, which is unfortunate. Yeah.
I was under their supervision when I got really sick. And when I left them a year later, maybe more, I was 27, so 2 years. when I was completely released of all that stuff.
You weren't living in the nursing facility,
No.
were you? Okay.
I was going back and forth.
Got
The
it.
first 6 months I was.
Because you couldn't walk at that point.
Mm-mm. I was in a wheelchair.
Oh my gosh. So did you ever think that you would walk again?
No, especially because a doctor who has all these degrees and comes in with his lab coat and says, just forget about it. Just don't focus on that. Focus on getting stronger.
Because walking is a lost cause.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he was telling you.
He didn't want me to waste all my energy on that.
And how many marathons have you done now?
214.
214. Well, you've shown them, haven't you? What was the process like during that 2 years? Where was your head when you were trying to get stronger? Did you just say, I'm just not listening to you, and I'm going to walk, I'm going to run, I'm going to go back to my normal life? Or did you buy into what he was saying and just ended up taking it one day at a time and getting stronger and stronger?
I first bought into what he was saying, and I spent a lot of time crying. Like, why me? How could this be? I'm so young. How can this be? And then something changed. I stopped listening to that sorry for myself girl and started to think, what if I prove them wrong? What if I could do this?
What changed? What made you start thinking that way?
Different people, different books. I started to read. When you're doing nothing, you have nothing to do but read. I started to read about other people's stories. People who've overcome amazing things, like Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust and lived to write beautifully about it. And of course, Helen Keller. I mean, so many wonderful teachers. My books were my friends. And the more I read, the more I said, well, maybe I could do more than they think. And maybe if I change my attitude and stop saying, poor me, why me? Why not me? And I started to focus more on healing instead of feeling sorry for myself. Just my attitude shifted by the teachers that were in front of me, my books. And I started to practice Buddhism and I started to meditate and I just started to change my way of eating completely.
So did the people around you think that you just had false hope? Or were you sharing this information with them?
I was sharing it with some people, but not all, because they were negative. When I was sharing it with them, I kept it more to myself.
Family members?
Yes. I should do the conventional thing instead of this complimentary thing.
Right.
And friends and doctors. Doctors were very against it.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, like you said, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So when you're a doctor, you probably want to tell your patient the realistic thing or maybe what somebody else has been through to lower your expectations.
I found healers in unnatural places and I listened to them more than the people who were learned with all their degrees because they gave me hope and I needed hope. That little glimmer of hope, I kept watering it every day. I kept nurturing it and eventually it would grow and it would grow and it would grow. And the more things I could do, the more hope I had. And
then the more you tried.
The more I tried, yes. The very first time I walked, I was on crutches at this point. The very first time I walked down the hall by myself, I thought I'd won the Olympics. I was so proud of myself and what the body could do.
Was anyone there to share that with you?
An orderly. A very large woman came into my room on a regular basis and talked to me. A Jamaican woman. She had a very thick Jamaican accent and she would say, "Hush, child, I know you're in pain, but it's okay. You're going to survive this. You are not this pain. You're bigger than this pain." She would soothe me. She would give me hope.
Did she share in your joy when you walked down the hall? I can imagine a big old bear hug.
It was very special. And that gave me more permission to seek out more things to do. I decided I was going to do a whole round of walking around the hospital by myself without assistance, I was already done with the wheelchair, without the crutches. I kept doing my physical therapy. If they prescribed 10 times, I would do 40. If they prescribed 20 minutes, I would do 2 hours. I just kept doing more and more and more.
Where did that come from? Like what part of your DNA, or your personality says, I'm not going to do just 20, I'm going to do 40. Or I'm not going to do just one marathon, I'm going to do 214 marathons. Where does that come from?
I think being a refugee. I think surviving something when I was very young, seeing my mother, seeing how much we've overcome. I don't know, sheer grit. Being a Russian, I don't know.
Well, I wonder too, because since you brought that up, I wonder if you see immigrants come to the U.S., and I hope I'm not being stereotypical or offending anyone here, but you see them working very hard because they came from a place of maybe desperation or of so little. and they appreciate every single thing that they can work toward. And so maybe just because you brought it up, maybe it's part of that, of having that appreciation, going back to, your very early years, your toddler years up until 7 when you moved here. You know what it could be like, and that's not adequate for you. You know that you can work harder to gain something else.
I think it was instilled in me from that migration from Russia to America to work hard and to not take no for an answer and to keep fighting and to not give up and to not feel sorry for yourself and to just roll up your sleeves and work harder. Because that's what we all around, not just myself, but all of us. It was thousands of us. I don't know, hundreds.
So you had the goal to make it around the unit, and you did it?
I did it.
Did you do it by yourself?
Yes. It was very important for me. It gave me strength and it gave me hope. And then I decided.
Did anyone know that you were doing it? So when I say, did you do it by yourself? You didn't have an orderly there. You didn't have someone watching out for you. You just said, no, today's going to be the day. I'm going to go out at 3:00. No one's going to be around. I'm going to go do it. And then you just kind of revel in it yourself.
I'd go halfway and then I would get really tired and then I would just drop. And then the muscles would just not fire anymore. And then the next day I'd go a little bit longer and the next day I'd go a little bit longer. And one day, I don't even remember when, I went all the way around. And I got back to the place where I started and I thought, wow, I just won the gold medal. I did it.
You did.
And that enabled me to set a higher goal. It was 1999 and it was the New York Avon Walk for Breast Cancer. It was on TV. The longest distance you can go to beat cancer with your feet. It was 60 miles from Bear Mountain to Manhattan. And it was a walking. And I said, I'm going to do that. I just walked around maybe a quarter mile by myself and I said, I'm going to do that. And I started working more and more towards that. And one day I did it.
You had a big goal. How much longer after that was it that you did it?
It was 2000.
So a year later?
I was already back to work. I had only taken a year off of work. I was already working back and I was walking as much as I could, but not 60 miles. I was walking with not like fast walking, not running, but I was back to walking. And the more I did it, in New York, you have to walk. You can't get from point A to point B without walking, which is why it was essential for me to get back to myself. And since I knew that I had come to this point, why couldn't I go further? The hell with them. What the hell did they know? So I set the goal to do the 60-mile Avon Walk for Breast Cancer.
Is that over 3 days? Or
yes.
Is that, okay.
At least it was. And this is 2000. And that's the very first time I did a distance event. And I was so proud of myself.
As well you should be, for sure. What did your family say?
I had a lot of support.
And your friends, they were probably, everybody had to be amazed. If they saw you, if they knew you and saw you go through this process, there had to be some spillover of inspiration to them. Did anybody else join you, or did anyone else go on to do other goals that, well, gosh, if she can do that, I can go do X?
Unfortunately, in those days, my friends were not concerned about getting themselves to a better place. And
because they were all working in the fund with you.
Yes, and I lost a lot of people along the way. Not everyone wants to see you succeed, because then they can look at themselves and say, well, I can't get there. And some people had a little bit of animosity towards me. I was asking for money. It was a fundraising situation. So I would come to you and I would say, I'm going to walk 60 miles. Can I ask you for a pledge for, say, $1 a mile? I don't know. I asked for some little amount. But a lot of people were supportive and a lot of people weren't. Not everyone wants to see you succeed, I've realized. And that's when you have to let those people go.
Where do you think that comes from?
Insecurity, fear. Maybe they're not living their full potential. Maybe they don't want to be where they are, but they don't have enough gumption to change their life. I was completely changing my life. I changed my diet. I used to go out drinking with my friends. Now I went out walking.
You were different. You were a different person.
We had a rule on the desk. No fizz, no biz. We would go out and drink and party with our clients. We were the bank. We supplied services, and we would take those funds out and show them a good time.
Did that mean the no fizz, no biz mean that if you didn't take the clients out, you wouldn't get
the business?
You wouldn't get the business because of something internally, or because
you weren't a team player?
Going out was just part of the networking?
Both. Okay. You weren't a team player. They weren't going to call you. They were going to call XYZ Bank to make their deals.
Oh. That's really sad.
It was the 90s. It was a different, it's 2000 now, I'm sorry. But it was a different time. It was before what we know.
Yeah, but I know that still goes on now. Under Armour was in the news recently for bringing clients to strip clubs, and they were under a lot of pressure because of the Me Too movement and everything else. And it's astounding to me that sort of thing it goes on, and that it's expected of a female too, that you're expected to partake in that kind of thing because it was the no biz. Also, for you, included strip clubs and that sort of thing.
It did. Right? In a financial company, our job was to entertain our clients. And sometimes it was Yankee games, and sometimes it was hockey, and sometimes it was a Madonna concert. And more than anything else, it was going out and drinking and going to strip bars.
That's a tough life.
Especially when you have to be on the desk at 6 a.m. You're burning the candle at both ends, really.
Yeah.
At one point, I was covering Europe, and I would work from 6 to 2. And then at 4, the market would close, and then we'd go out, and we'd be out all night.
And you pulled yourself out of that world. And what happened when you did that? You said that you were losing friends. Were you also losing businesses at that fund where you were working?
No, I was able to maintain my business composure. It was just one aspect. I also had to do all kinds of work in the office, and that trumped the fact that I would not go out so much. I mean, I would work hard to make sure that my paperwork was on time and all my budgets were on time, and try to do as best a job as I always could, because that's what I was taught. Why do anything if you're going to do it half-assed, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
So my performance made it okay that I didn't go out so much. They couldn't fire me because I was doing so well.
Right. Got it. So you're on the road to recovery. You do your 60-mile walk.
I had a lot of support. I raised a lot of money, and I went the longest distance you could go at the time with my feet to stomp out breast cancer. And in the process, I met people who were doing what I was doing, and my circle of friends started to change. I started to spend more time with my folks that were training, and I learned about an event that raised money for brain cancer, which is what I had. Nothing wrong with breast cancer, but that's not the event I wanted to raise money for. Mm-hmm. And I learned about the Race for Hope. It's in Washington, D.C. It's a 5K, and it was a race. It wasn't a walk. So I had to learn how to run. It was a 5K. I'd never run before, but I was remembering I was in the hospital. I was at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I watched. The New York City Marathon was going on while I was sitting in my wheelchair getting my little cancer drip, and I watched, and I was bewildered, like, wow, who are all these people?
You were watching people run by your window?
When I was
not just on TV.
No.
You literally saw them running by.
It's at mile 16.3. When you're running the New York City Marathon, you pass by the hospital, and everyone, every nurse, every patient, every doctor, every orderly, everyone is out there cheering people on. And I watched. I wheeled myself over to my little window, and I watched, and I watched, and I watched for hours. And it was imprinted in the back of my brain. I didn't think that I could do it, but I thought, wow, how healthy do these people look? What if I was strong enough one day? What if God gave me the opportunity to exit this wheelchair? I want to do that. And then I filed it away. But while I was doing this walk, this 60-mile walk, I met a group of people that were talking about an event, a brain cancer event. And I said, that's the one I have to do. This is the one for me. It was a stepping stone. The breast cancer event was a stepping stone. And I did the Race for Walk.
So you started. I
started running. First, I would run a minute, walk a minute. Run a minute, walk a minute. Oh my God, run a minute, walk a minute. This went on for months. I ran my very first mile, and I was like, wow. I never thought I could run a mile, but I did. And the first mile led to the second mile. I finished the Race for Hope, and I was euphoric. There was a team of survivors, and we had yellow shirts. Everyone had different color shirts, but the survivors wore yellow shirts to represent survivorship. And we started out with balloons, and we started the walk, and then the gun went off, and we started running. I felt so empowered to represent as a survivor, to finish, to run my first running race. I felt so empowered, and I knew that I was going to run that marathon. I was very, very, very grateful that my body could do what it could do. I worked so hard to get here, and I was just grateful, and I wanted to continue that. I knew that I survived to do this. I survived to do this event, raising the money, raising the funds, raising the awareness, raising my own self. I had become the person I'd always wanted to be. Not the person who would go out and drink with people in a strip bar or wherever the hell.
You found a whole new life.
I found a whole new life. And those who were not with me, they were against me, and I just let them go. My circle changed. The people in my circle became...
That's tough. That's difficult to let people go. What was your first marathon?
The Marine Corps Marathon.
How did you choose that?
At the Race for Hope, I found a group of people in the survivor tent. We talk about what kind, not how old you are or what you do for a living, but what kind, what brought you here. And I met a family, Michael Quinn and his wife, Bridget. They talked about their son, Michael Sr., talked about Michael Jr., and he died when he was 14 of an oligodendrite glioma, and that's the kind of tumor I had. Instantly, I was struck because my tumor owns only 4% of all brain tumors. It's a very, very unique tumor. And when I met them and they told me about their son, Michael, and why they're here today, and I said, wow, I'm a survivor of this. How can I help? What can I do? And they said they're forming a team. And I said, I would love to be a part of your team. And we're running our first inaugural marathon, the Marine Corps Marathon, because they're Marines, they live in D.C. And I said, absolutely, I will do it. If they told me to go to their house...
And then you thought, oh crap, what did I just get myself into?
It wasn't until I got home and I Googled how long a marathon was. I didn't know.
Right.
I signed up for their team and I started training. I just ran my first race ever, 5K. 5 months later was the Marine Corps Marathon.
5 months later, oh my gosh. Yeah, so you better get training.
Roll up my sleeves, get to work. I put together a training plan. I Googled Hal Higdon's training plan, 20 weeks. I started following the program. I had to raise $5,000. I started emailing all my friends and all my clients and everyone. I got to work. I was going to run that marathon for Michael.
For yourself.
I was going to fulfill the promise I made to myself. If God ever got me out of that wheelchair, I was going to do what those people are doing out there.
How'd you do on that marathon?
I finished with 4:47.
Wow.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Oh my gosh.
I did the run a minute, walk a minute, run a minute, walk a minute. Eventually I was running for 2 miles, walking a minute, running for 2 miles, walking 2 minutes. Eventually I got myself to running for 10 miles and then I'd have to walk. I mean, I got to the point where I was able to walk less, run more. And I got stronger. Again, the body's remarkable.
Yeah,
the body can do so much more than you think it can do.
I know. And when you feel a little pain, a little niggle, because you've just stretched yourself a little bit, I think that's when a lot of people back off and say, I can't do that. And that's your body healing and saying, give me more. Let's do more.
That's your body reminding you that, look at how far you've come. I'd always revert to that little girl who couldn't do anything. I'd revert to myself when I was living in a wheelchair. And I thought, I have to run for her. When it got challenging, I dedicate that mile to that person who would trade places with me in a heartbeat. Say, Michael, who didn't make it. Another friend I met training, Dana, her daughter died of a brain tumor. Caitlin was her name. I dedicate that mile to Caitlin. And I'm going to run for her because the onus wasn't on me anymore. I'm going to run for her, focus on that. She's giving me strength. She's sending me power. And then I'd get to the next mile. And then I would dedicate that mile to someone else. And that would take the pain off of me. My hips hurt. My knees hurt. My ankles hurt. Forget that. I would say, this is for them and run that mile for them. That's how I got through my first marathon.
And what year was that?
2005.
Okay. So in the 13 years since then, you've run 213 more marathons. Where do you get off thinking that you can run so many dang marathons in such a short period of time? What happened? How did that explode?
When I came into the office after I had run the Marine Corps Marathon, I actually had a standing ovation.
That had to feel great.
I had raised so much money, but I'd raised awareness and I'd raised hope. I knew I did because I wore my survivor shirt the whole time. And I would write people's names who would donate a certain amount of their loved ones who didn't make their cancer. And I just had this feeling, this wall of hope around me. I had this feeling of pure joy and pure strength around me that I could do it. And I'm going to do it for you, and I'm going to do it for you, and I'm going to do it for all those who can't do it. I'd survived for this. I had a standing ovation. And I thought, okay, on to the next marathon. It was a vehicle. I was given an opportunity to do something better, something bigger than me. Immediately, I signed up for the next marathon. And I raised money for the National Brain Tumor Society in LA. And then I raised money for the National Brain Tumor Foundation in San Francisco. And that was 3 months later. In those days, 3 months was how long you needed to train for the next marathon. As soon as I finished the marathon, I trained for the next.
You looked for the next one,
next.
yeah.
And then it just grew. The more money I raised, the more empowered I felt. I was a vehicle. God was using me. That's why I survived.
But even just doing some quick math here, even doing that training plan every 3 months, that doesn't give you a total of 214 marathons. So how did you ramp that up and start thinking that you're going to do one, every other week or however many it is?
In the process of running all these races, I'd met some amazing people. Running has brought amazing, amazing people into my life. And I'd met people who were doing much more than I was. And they showed me, they laid the groundwork for me and said, if I can do this, you can do it too. People that were older and also had their own challenges, and they had kids, and I didn't have any kids. I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. I met the marathon maniacs, and one maniac led to the next maniac, led to the next maniac. I met a woman who was a 50-stater, and she was doing a marathon in all 50 states. And I said, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be the person to go to all 50 states and see all national parks and run a marathon and raise money and raise awareness. And it just mushroomed. It was bigger than me.
Yeah.
I surrendered to it.
And the Marathon Maniacs, I'll just again tell listeners, it's a kind of a loose-knit organization. You pay a small membership fee to be part of. And I think, is Steve in Tacoma, Washington? Do you know? I think he's up in that area. And he leads it, or he was leading it. People from all over the world who are, the criteria is a certain number of marathons that you
can do 3 marathons in 3 months, or you can do 2 marathons in 2 weeks to be the lowest level.
Yeah.
And when I joined, I was at the lowest level, but I saw these people that were doing so much more, and it becomes like a challenge.
Yeah, it does.
What more can the body do?
Because you realize, and Steve is also our mutual Facebook friend, and I think that's what happened. There was a photo posted of you and Steve and Sabrina. And I thought, who's this gal? And what did she just do? let me check that out. But yeah, I got into the Maniacs doing the Quadzilla. So 4 marathons in 4 days.
That's another thing we have in common.
Yeah.
Done a bunch of Quadzillas.
Yeah, neat.
But when I joined the Maniacs, my first goal was to do a marathon in all 50 states. But that allowed me to meet new people and to have travel buddies, because I was doing all this by myself. And to join the 50 staters, you have to do 10 marathons in 10 states. And I wasn't there yet. I was like at 6 or 7. I was on my way. And I met people who were going for a titanium, 52 marathons in 52 weeks. And I met more than one. I met many. And I thought at this point in my life, I was doing 4 marathons a year. And my friends thought I was crazy. And they were doing 52.
Right.
So they showed me by their own example what is possible. It is people. People have always showed me what I could do. Don't limit yourself. My favorite quote. Don't be limited by your challenges. Rather, challenge your limits. And I've always lived by that. Whatever you think you can do more. The more people I met, the more they showed me, the more I said, okay, I'm going to try for that. Why not? And I tried for the next level and the next level and the next level. And before you know it, I was going for titanium. And I did.
Well, that's the interesting thing, I think, about listening to other people's stories and how important it is, because when you hear what someone else has done, it makes things possible for yourself. And all the stories that you've been telling yourself about, that you're not even necessarily verbalizing it, but there's just somewhere deep inside, you just think, this isn't possible. Like, no one could do that. I remember when I read Born to Run, the first time I heard of people who could run 100-miler, and I just thought, well, that's not possible. Like, people don't really do that. That's not true. And then I started researching it a little bit more, or it became just a little bit more of my awareness. And I started hearing it. I was like, oh my God, these people are doing bad water, 135 miles in the desert. They're doing 200-milers, and they're doing all this crazy stuff. It's crazy. But you hear about it, and then you start planning for it. Like I have.
That's the thing about running. Same. You can always go to the next level. You can always go either faster or longer. And I've chosen to do longer over the years. And now that I've done 100-milers, now I want to go back and go faster.
Yeah. I'm working this year with Sabrina for a Boston qualifier, for one. I may dip my toe in the world of triathlons as well. I started swimming, so I'm looking at that. Yeah. And then in September, I'm doing the Epic 5. So 5 ultras 5 Hawaiian Islands in 5 days.
Looks amazing.
So, yeah. What are you doing in September?
I am pacing the Air Force Marathon.
Okay.
And my husband is going to be deployed, so it's perfect for me to. He's going to be in the Air Force somewhere in Asia, and I'm going to be pacing the Air Force Marathon. We're going to be linked, even though we're going to be miles apart.
Nice. That's nice.
And
so how did
the Air Force Marathon, if I might just say, was in 2012 my titanium marathon. That is the year that I attained my titanium, and I was only the 35th woman in the world to do so. Currently, I just checked the website before you came. There's 35,000 members of the Marathon Maniacs, but back then it was like 16,000. I don't know, maybe 10,000. It was much less. And not everyone was going for titanium. Some people were just doing enough to qualify, and that's it. But that wasn't going to be enough for me. I was going to go the next ring and the next ring and the next ring. And finally, I became titanium. But yes, Air Force in September is where I'll be pacing.
If the timing's right, maybe you can also, like, why not? Also do the Epic 5.
I think the following year, absolutely.
Yeah,
I want to lead. I want you, by your example, to lead me.
Well, now I have to go run. I don't know. The 50 states don't appeal to me
because
quite
your heart
as much.
Is internationally based.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
You want to go to the furthest place.
I do. I want to do London. I've done Tokyo, but I want to do some of the majors abroad and that kind of thing. So, how did you meet your husband?
At a marathon.
At a marathon. How do you meet people at marathons? I mean, everyone is.
In 2010 in Wisconsin, Pine Line Trail Marathon. Thank you for asking. It was the very first time I had placed. It was a very small event, and I was third in my age group. Coming from New York with thousands and thousands of people, you can never place. Yeah. So I was so ecstatic to place. I went up there to get my little spike. It was a railroad spike. It was a railroad rails to trail marathon. And I got my little award, and I was crying because I remember what it felt like to learn to walk. And here I am running a marathon, getting third in my age group. And I said, I've come such a long way for this. And I meant metaphorically. And he was standing next to me. He also got first in his age group. We were in the same age group, but he was always winning. And he said, no, I've come a long way for this, honey. He came from Alaska, and he took 5 flights, whatever, crazy distance to get to the event. And we decided to talk it over.
You said, oh, yeah, I came from a wheelchair. Beat that.
We decided to talk it over and found out he's also on a journey to do a marathon in all 50 states, and he needed New York. I needed Alaska.
Look at that.
We exchanged contact, and we decided to keep in touch. We planned to do a race together later that year that we both needed, Delaware. I'd already signed up for Delaware, and he said he needed Delaware. He went home and looked it up, and he said, let's do it together. And I'm always looking for other people to share my adventures with. And I told him if he ever got into New York, welcome to stay with me. I live on the course. He said the same, of course. If you ever want to do Alaska, you're welcome to stay with me. I'm happy to host you, show you around. I took him up on it because I have the Wanderlust. And I met him in Delaware later that year, and we had a purely platonic, wonderful, great weekend together. He came to New York. I came to Alaska. One thing led to the other. Found out that we're both crazy about each other. It was in Alabama this month, 2011, January. In Alabama, that he said, I can't do this anymore. I said, okay. He said, don't you want to know why? I said, maybe your girlfriend doesn't like you traveling with another girl. He said, I don't have a girlfriend. Every time I go home, all I do is think about you. It's too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, really? Because I'm in love with you. And then we kissed, and that was that.
Oh my gosh, how sweet is that?
We went from being completely travel platonic marathon buddies that we'd see each other once in a while to being madly in love.
Yeah, professing your love.
What are we going to do about this? You live in Alaska. I live in New York. This can't go on. But it feels right. Let's just pursue it. And so every month we vowed to meet in a new state, a new city that we both needed or both wanted to go to, and just continue and see where it goes. 3 years later in Louisiana, also January, he proposed to me at the finish line of the Louisiana Marathon. I was pacing. As I crossed the finish line, he's on his knee. Will you run the marathon of life with me?
Oh my God.
And of course I said yes.
How sweet is that?
And we had already known, before he proposed to me, we had decided we're going to do our 50th state together because I was just a couple of states away and he was just a couple of states away. And we just continued this wonderful journey until we were going to do our 50th state. But now we were going to get married, or as I like to say, Mauied.
Yeah.
It was the Maui Oceanfront Marathon.
Oh, I love it.
We chose it special before we even knew we were going to get married. And I contacted the race director, Les Wright, and I said, this is what I want to do. Do I have permission to do this on your race course without disturbing your race could you guide me? And he not only emphatically said yes, but he helped us. He helped me hire the right photographer, the event photographer. He helped me hire the right officiant. He helped orchestrate the whole thing.
I love it.
And we started the marathon like regular people. At mile 17 and a half, we stopped. We had a 15 to 20 minute ceremony. With this run, Ivy wed. We continued running. 8 miles later, we're husband and wife and first time 50 state finishers.
I love it. So were you wearing your wedding dress? Did you wear it the entire, because I saw a photo of that. Were you wearing it the entire time?
Yes. I have a wonderful, wonderful outfit from Running Skirts, runningskirts.com. And I'm an ambassador, so I contacted them and said, this is what I want to do. I bought your white running skirt. I bought your white running strappy top. Help me brightify it. Tell me how I can make it more brightified.
Yeah.
I sent it to Christy, one of the owners. It's owned by twin sisters. And she brightified it for me. She made this beautiful outfit for me and she sent it back to me. And I asked her how much and she didn't even charge me. She just said, enjoy it. Get married. Have fun. I had a veil put on my running visor to make it more brightified. And I ran the entire thing with my outfit. And with this run, Ivy wed.
I love it. And what's your husband's name?
Shane.
What did he wear?
Ink and Burn tux.
Ink and Burn that's a company that
running and bike clothing, cycling clothing.
Yeah.
It looks like a tux, but it's actually a bike shirt.
Yeah, okay.
And black shorts. Easy for him. And we had a group.
How special.
Everyone who ran with us are fellow marathon maniacs that we've met along the way and 50 staters. And I created a Facebook page for us and I sent a mass email to all our friends who are going to run the marathon or who might consider, everyone wants to run Hawaii, right? All 50 staters eventually have to get to Hawaii. I'm not asking people to go to Piedmont, North Dakota.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wants to come to Maui in January? Watch us get married, run with us, be a part of our luau, be part of our new life together. And we had 40 guests from all 50 states. Not all 50 states, but I mean from all over.
From all around, yeah.
And many of them ran with me. And I had my running bridesmaids in Marathon Maniac shirts. My father came from New York. His mother came from Pennsylvania. And they stayed and watched our ceremony. Then they got in their car and waited for us to cross the finish line. And it was a very wonderful experience.
Why did you do it partway through?
Because the race director said this was a private beach, but it wouldn't interrupt the course.
Right.
And we didn't have to get permission from anywhere. It was an actual beach, but part of the course, but not.
Right. It would have been more difficult on the course at the end, let's say. Okay.
Logistics.
Yeah.
And he lives on the island. He knows. He's the race director. I trusted him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He gave me the best advice and I followed it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did. Actually went back to Maui, same race course, wearing the same outfits 3 years later to cross the finish line for the second time 50 state finisher. And I hope in a few years to be going back for my third 50 state finish.
When you say third 50 state or second 50 state, are you saying that you've done all 50 states once, twice, and now you're on your third time?
I'm 31 states into round 3.
And different marathons each time?
Mostly.
In each state, yeah.
Some I have to repeat because there's just very limited options. I'm going to repeat North Dakota in May because another friend of ours, 2 friends that we've met on the journey, are getting married at the marathon.
Okay.
So some states I have to repeat.
See, following
the same
your
way.
lead.
Yes. And we met them on our own journey. And of course, we've inspired them. And that makes me so happy. That is truly, truly the reason why I'm so happy, because now today I help inspire people to do what they love to do.
You know, just to, like kind of thinking back on the entire conversation and thinking of your coming here from former Soviet Union and kind of how that played a part in your later years, and then going through brain cancer, wheelchair, and how you overcame that. Gosh, there's so much strength in you, like completely, like a crazy amount, you know, and you're not an overbearing New Yorker. Let's just say that. Were you ever?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't think so. Somehow I don't think you were. You certainly aren't, but you have a tremendous amount of strength and fortitude. Do you feel that way? Or do you feel like that you're more like a kind of a river, kind of going with the flow and allowing your life to unfold as it should, not necessarily as you quote unquote want it to? Like you don't seem to be pushing in a specific direction.
I always let the universe take me where it needs me. It's one of the things I say to myself when I go to sleep at night. Take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say. Just keep my friends and loved ones out of harm's way. It's a prayer I learned when I was little. I let the universe guide me always. This is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Okay, I understand. Teach me.
Has that always been part of you, or is that after you've gone through these experiences?
I think each experience just cements it, just puts the exclamation point on it. Maybe this is not what I wanted to happen, but this is what was meant to happen. And I grew stronger from it. I learned from it. And so the next experience, well, this is not how I would have wanted it, but now looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened because it showed me what I had to do next. That which doesn't kill you, as Nietzsche says, makes you stronger. Sometimes when I'm being shut out of something, when I really, really want something and it doesn't happen, I'm mad. But then I realized I'm being redirected. The universe has something better in mind for me. I'm supposed to be somewhere else. It's protecting me from this and channeling me into this. And I let the process of synchronicity, I let the universe guide me. I always have.
Are you still a Buddhist practitioner?
I am.
In what form? I mean, is it through meditation primarily? Okay.
I practice yoga, meditation. I eat a vegan diet. I learned
We haven't even talked about your vegan diet, which I do want to talk about as
First rule
well.
of Buddhism is ahimsa, do no harm. And I learned through my practices that doing no harm to animals was important. And this is in the 1990s, before it was a word. It just meant do no harm.
Before vegan was a word, yeah.
I'm so happy I went down this route because I heal much faster than regular people. Sometimes people ask me, how do you do so many marathons?
Than regular people, yeah.
The most I've done is 38 marathons in 1 year and 1 calendar year because the maniacs don't count it by year. You can overlap.
Right.
But I heal faster than regular people because I practice yoga, because I'm kind to myself with my diet. I give myself only nourishing things. I try not to give myself any crap. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. You're traveling and this is what's acceptable. And I don't want to beat myself up. When I can, I go back to my normal diet. But 95% of the time, I practice an all raw, vegan, healthy, locally harvested, not far away diet. Local, I meant to say.
Yeah.
Organic, sorry.
Organic, yeah.
I forget. And that's how I've lived for so long. My muscles, my cells, I recover faster.
Yeah.
My tissue, my muscle tissue.
I agree with that, yeah. I mean, I know for myself, and I'm mostly vegan, plant-based, not entirely, because it's difficult when I travel. And I also don't want to be a pain in the butt. If I go to someone's house and they've got cheese lasagna, I want to accept that.
Same.
You know?
I want to accept it with gratitude and not make it all about me.
Right.
That's why I say 95%.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have an option.
Yeah, same with me, 95%. But yeah, anyway, I think that's a great way to have some flexibility at least with it.
And be kind to yourself. If you don't do it, it's okay. You tried. You did the best you could. But meditation and my daily practice of my running and my yoga, I read a lot of Buddhist teachers.
Yeah, and you have beautiful mala beads there.
I have beads all over the place. My prayer beads are everywhere. I don't go anywhere without them.
Can I see? What are these made of? Do you know?
I don't.
It's hard for me to see.
So many ornate
it's
ones.
like a wood.
These are just regular ones.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
These are not blessed or anything, but I've been to different places where I've purchased beads from the locals and I've had them blessed. And I keep them in different parts of my house in New York, and I have an altar, and I'm thankful for the universe and everything it's brought me.
Do you journal?
I do.
Do you have a specific practice when you journal?
Gratitude.
Yeah, I'm a big journaler. I think it's so incredibly important to get to know ourselves and to know what direction we're going to take for the day or the week or the month or the year. And today's January 10th.
January 19th is a special day for me.
That's your wedding day.
I'm going to be 5 years Maui'd. And of course, true to form, we are going to run a marathon on our Mauiversary in Redding, California. We've never done that one before. It's hard to find a new place every time on Martin Luther King weekend, but they exist, and we go everywhere for them.
What do you use to find your marathons? What website?
The Marathon Maniacs.
Okay. So you actually use that as a resource for research. Okay.
I use it as a resource for so many things. I mean, I meet friends that way. I share rides with people. I actually don't drive. New Yorker.
Yeah, New Yorker. Yeah.
I share rooms with people.
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't surprise me because these days it's so easy with Lyft and other ways to get around that it doesn't surprise me that you don't drive. But yeah, it makes sense with a New Yorker, as a New Yorker.
I figure out which races my friends are doing, and I want to participate in said race versus X race because I've already done all 50 states. I don't have to focus on just one state. Who's going to do said race? I'm going to do that race. So the Marathon Maniacs have provided so much for me.
Great.
And I have a lot of clients that way too. Being a massage therapist, I help people feel better in their bodies.
I've heard amazing things about your massages.
Oh,
I'm sorry
you.
that I didn't schedule enough time to.
Next time.
I know, next time, yeah. Or next time you come up to Seattle. Yeah, definitely. Hey, as we just wrap up here, is there anything that you'd like to cover that we haven't yet chatted about? How long have you been vegan?
Since 98.
Oh, long time. Really long time. And that was during your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was during my surgery, between my two surgeries, I got really sick. And it was the best way for me to make my body healthy again. I'd done a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I also helped different practitioners. A nutritionist spoke to me at length about how I can change my diet to heal. I found a woman in New Mexico who was practicing herb medicine, like a shaman, who told me which herbs to take. And everything pointed to veganism, pointed to lack of animal-based products.
Right.
And I just stopped it little by little by little, but I haven't had any, and I'm happier. And I know I'm doing less harm to the universe.
Right.
I know I'm leaving a smaller footprint, and that makes me happy. That sings to my vibrational truth.
I went vegetarian 28 years ago for health reasons. And then over the years, it's evolved, and then it became ethical, and then environmental. And now there's just so many reasons for it. It just really makes sense.
Now there's no reason not to do it.
I know, and there's so many options. There's so many
companies now that are making products for people who don't want to give up their hot dogs or their hamburgers.
Don't you guys have what's the ultimate? No, next level burger. Don't you guys have next level down here?
We do.
Yeah. Maybe I should stop there before I go back up to Seattle, because I think they're a Portland-based company, aren't they?
It's such a foodie city here. It's so easy to be anything, whether you're plant-based or you're gluten-free or whatever you are, you could do it here.
I know.
Another reason we chose to live here.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Doing a marathon in all 50 states with my husband allowed me to see where we're going to live or where we're not going to live. Mm-hmm. And so every place we went with a different vantage point. What's the housing market like? Okay, it's a great place to run, but what's the work like? Mm-hmm. Can I get employment here? We went with a different pair of eyes, and we chose Portland on purpose.
Is he still in the military?
He is.
Okay. Wow.
I wish I could say something inspirational. I wish I could say something to others to remind them to never give up hope.
Yeah, because what you've said in the last hour and a half has not been inspirational at all. I'm joking, of course. It's all been incredibly inspirational.
Just never know what you can do until you try. And just when you think you can't take another step, that's when you can do a lot more. That's really where your true strength comes from.
Mm-hmm. Do you know David Goggins? Do you know of him?
Yes.
The Navy SEAL.
He's a Navy SEAL who has done incredible. I just didn't recognize the name right away, but yes.
Yeah, he has. He's actually kind of on the podcast circuit right now, and he has a book out about his life that I've just started reading. He is famous for saying
60%.
Yes, exactly. So when you think that you're tapped out, you still have another 60% in your reserve, and you can just keep going. And I think of that all the time. Last weekend, I ran, just in my neighborhood, I ran 18 miles, and I had one of the conversations that he was having with a podcaster. I had it on with Rich Roll, and I was listening to that.
Vegan.
Yes, I know, an ultra endurance athlete, and I was running, and I was like, you have no excuse to feel tired, Beth. Like, you're only 12 miles in, you just better keep going. And so listening to him is just such an inspiration. Like, he is such a kick in the pants. He really is. But not to take anything away from you, because you are a kick in the pants also, and a inspiration for me, and to rethink my goals and what I'm doing and what's possible, what's absolutely possible. So thank you. I do like to end these conversations with one final question, and that is, what does it mean to you to be bold?
Follow your heart. Absolutely follow your heart. No matter what society tells you, or what your parents tell you, or what the media tells you, listen to that voice that's been stifled by everything else, and let that flame live. Follow your truth, because there are beautiful things you can achieve if you just believe. What if you didn't listen to all those people who said you can't do it, but listen to that little voice that says, I can. You can train that voice and follow that.
And like you surround yourself with really mentors, even if you've never met them, whether that's Helen Keller or Viktor Frankl or David Goggins.
So many.
Or Julia Garling, whoever it is.
Marianne Williamson was a big one for me.
Beautiful, yeah.
Just so many. I can't think of her name. She wrote A Gift from the Sea.
Oh, don't know. But I'll look it up.
There's so many.
I know. I'll look it up. I'll link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
The words you tell yourself are important. Your thoughts become your words. What you tell yourself, those mental movies you play when you're running or when you're doing anything that says you can't, you have to turn that off and remind yourself that you can. So what I meant to say was your thoughts become your words, and your words, they become your actions, and your actions, they become your beliefs, and your beliefs, it makes your character. So it's all about what you feed yourself. Just tell yourself that you can, because you can do so much more than you think you can. And I'm proof of that. I'm 100% proof of that.
You really are.
I just want to tell you a short story.
Please.
I ran a 100-miler that I DNF'd 3 times.
And
Did not finish. But I did not give up. Everyone kept telling me to pick a different race. And I did. I chose a different race and I finished that. But I kept going back to that first 100-miler that I didn't finish. And I knew that if I just went back one more time, I would be the victor. I knew that I could not give up because I left a part of my soul on that course. And each time I went a little bit longer until I quit. But eventually, for the 4th time, I went back and I finished the 100-miler. I completed it and I PR'd in the process, and I have that buckle. And I sent a picture of myself wearing my buckle, that 100-miler that defeated me for 3 times. And then I finally did it to my old doctor who said I was never going to walk again. I don't know if he got it or not, but that's not the point. The point is you never know what you're capable of, and don't give up. Don't believe anyone who says you can't, especially yourself. That voice inside that says I can't, it could be trained to say I can. That's all I have to say.
I love it. Where can people find you online? You have a practice.
I have a practice.
Portland. Do you have a website?
I'm actually in New York as well. I'm licensed both in New York and Portland. My website is marathonmassage.massagetherapy.com. I am Julia Garling. On Facebook, I'm Julia K. Garling. On Instagram, I'm Marathon Massage.
So say your website name again.
marathonmassage.massagetherapy.com.
Okay, it's a long one. I just wanted to make sure I had that right. Okay, great. Thank you so much again for being available and for having me in your absolutely gorgeous home. I love it. This is so beautiful. And I should take a picture and I'll post it in the show notes if you're okay with it, of all your hundreds of medals, your finisher medals.
I actually don't have that many. I give away a lot more than I keep.
You give away? To who?
Medal for Medal.
What's that?
It's an organization, I'm so glad you asked, that gives medals to children that are in the hospital right now fighting. And their struggle is much more real than my 26.2 miles. So when you give them your medal, you put the medal around them and you say, you're fighting, you deserve this. It actually raises their white blood cell count and they get better. They deserve to feel like a hero because they are. Every day that they're fighting, they are a hero. It's a great organization called Medal for Medal. And you can donate your medals to them and they take off the banners and they put their own banners on and they go to local hospitals and give the medals to children.
Unbelievable. That's beautiful. That is a great way to end this too. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.
How incredible is she? I hardly have the words to tell you how inspirational that conversation was for me. Imagine what she went through to get to where she is now. Boy, she was dealt what could have been the absolute worst news ever, and she pulled through and just turned things around. She is just really just a huge inspiration. For links to all the things we chatted about in this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com, and there you will find the show notes for this and all episodes. You can also find those links and show notes in whatever podcast app it is that you use to listen to this. While you're on the site there, don't forget to check out my Patreon page at shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm WonderGal on Instagram. This month, February, I'm giving away a pair of OOFOS shoes. Runners likely already know about OOFOS. They've got these super comfy sandals, and there's nothing better than slipping your foot into a pair of these after a marathon. But they also have lifestyle shoes. And after wearing a pair of these myself, these lifestyle shoes over the last couple of months, I reached out to them and I asked if they'd be interested in giving away a pair to someone in my community. So yes, you could win a pair of shoes from OOFOS. The style is the OOMGs. You can look it up on the website. I'll link to it in the show notes as well. To enter is pretty darn easy. You'll first need to send me an email and give me your best tip or tips for packing shoes when you travel. Now, I have my own method, but I know that there are a lot of ways you might end up carrying shoes for a trip. So if you send me a note at beth@shesboldpodcast.com, what I'll do is I will enter you in the drawing. I'll also create a blog post and include all of those tips so you can see what everybody does. So that's pretty easy. Now that gets you one entry, and that's the critical one. You've got to do that. But to be entered more than once, make sure you're subscribed to the She's Bold podcast newsletter. Now that just comes out with each new episode, and it basically just reminds you that there's an episode out and gives you a little bit of information about it. And you can sign up at shesboldpodcast.com/newsletter. You'll get one more entry if you sign up for my monthly newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site. There, you'll also receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. You can find that at wanderlustandlipstick.com. That's WANDER, wanderlustandlipstick.com. Check out wandertours.com if you would like to travel with me. Although we do have a waiting list, we just had a couple of cancellations on our fall Ireland women-only tour. So let me know if you're interested in that trip or any other future trips that we have coming up. Don't forget, you can leave a message at 877-280-5170. And I may just feature you and any questions you have on a future episode. Ladies, don't forget to join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup. You're going to love the positivity, the encouragement, and the support from that community. We are just inching up on 2,100 members in that group, and it's pretty cool. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.